Hello everyone, I am Gina Fernandez and I am the strawberry breeder at North Carolina State University. Today I'm going to be talking about strawberry cultivars for production in North Carolina. So we're going to talk about two groups of cultivars. One that have a group that has been around for a long time, we call them the standards, and then another group will be alternatives you could consider planting at your farm. So there are three standards, and I'm going to kind of go through these really quickly. Sweet Charlie is the early one. It's sweet, has fairly low yields, and it's from the University of Florida. The second standard is Chandler. It's been around for a long time, from University of California. It's fairly high yields, good flavor, and has been very well adapted to many regions across the state and has great flavor. The third standard is Camarosa. It's also from the University of California. Short day, medium-sized fruit. It has moderate to steady yields, and then at the end of the season, the flavor is quite good. It can be used for pick-your-own sales and also a little bit of wholesale as well. Now, some alternatives to consider. A lot of these cultivars we have trialed many years in North Carolina at one or more locations in the state, in the Piedmont, in the Coastal Plain, and in Western North Carolina. We consider them to be successful for most locations, and you can see that data. I'll give you a link at the end. And they are listed in this talk from early to mid-season, and then also a group of everbearing cultivars as well. All right, so let's go to those alternatives. So the first alternative we'd like to consider is Rocco. This is a strawberry variety from our breeding program here at North Carolina State University. It has medium-sized fruit, steady yield through the season, very good flavor, and is somewhat soft. It sometimes has seeds at the surface or at the surface of the fruit. It's best for pick-your-own and also other direct-to-consumer sales, so it's not a shipper. We like to consider it as an alternative for Sweet Charlie. Why plant it? It is early. It will get your season going earlier, and it is the one we like to eat, and it is growing in popularity across the state and across the region and even in the Midwest. The second alternative to consider is Ruby June. It is a short day, medium-sized fruit, early to mid-season, has very good flavor, moderately firm, so it can be good for pick-your-own and also some wholesale markets. We like to consider it as a Chandler alternative, and it has a planting date similar to Chandler, so it's very important you get it planted on time to get those good yields. And why plant this one? It has very nice flavor. It's a complement to other cultivars. Camino Real is another one for you to consider. It's short day, mid-season, very large fruit, high yields, a fair flavor, but a very firm berry. It's got that nice dark color and a white internal color. It's good for wholesale or pick-your-own markets, fairly disease tolerant and good rain tolerance. Why plant it? Mostly because it is firm. Liz is another new cultivar from our breeding program here. It's mid to late season, medium-sized fruit with very high yields. Most years it is of the highest yielding cultivar in all our trials. It's moderately firm with improving flavor through the season, somewhat like Camarosa. It's probably best, though, for pick-your-own markets and direct sales, direct-to-consumer sales. In some locations, it can develop a large canopy. It's got fair rain tolerance, and we consider it as an alternative to Camarosa. Why plant it? It has high yields, consistently high yields. Okay, another one to consider is Merced. This has large fruit with moderate to high yield, fair flavor, and firm. It has a smaller canopy, so you can see some sunburn to fruit. It's probably best for direct or consumer sales and wholesale. Because it is a smaller plant, we recommend a closer planting spacing, and it will need higher nitrogen throughout the spring. Why plant this one? It has a nice appearance and is firm. Radiance is another short day cultivar. It's from the University of Florida, early to mid-season, fair flavor and firm. This cultivar and most of the cultivars we tested from the University of Florida flower during the winter. So soon after they're put into the ground, they start flowering, and that will reduce their yield. So once the season starts, it can be a relatively steady producer. So once it gets going and there's no more chance of frost, it will be a nice producer. It can be used under tunnels, but it is not rain tolerant. Why plant it? We found it to be disease susceptible and have low yields because of those flowering losses of flowers in the winter. But some growers in North Carolina are having moderate success with this cultivar, so it's something to consider. Albion is the first of the ever-bearing types. We call it a mid-season for that first spring crop. Large to very large fruit, moderate yield, good to very good flavor, and it is a good cultivar for extended season, low tunnels, high tunnels, greenhouse production. It's also good for direct-to-consumer sales and wholesale. It will need a little bit more nitrogen through the season because of that long fruiting season, and you need to make sure that you get the planting date right if you're going to, especially if you're going to have a fall production of fruit. Why plant it? It has that nice summer harvest and has really nice flavor. Fronteris is another cultivar that's ever-bearing. It has large fruit and very high yields. It's firm and has a fair flavor. Plants need a little bit more nitrogen during the spring because of the large yields. It's good for direct-to-consumer sales and wholesale markets. For fall production, you need to plant earlier than you would for spring production. Flavor and color can be an issue. It's not real rain tolerant. So why we plant Fronteris? Because it's very firm and it has high yield. Monterey is the last of the ever-bearing cultivars we're going to be talking about. It's medium, large berry, and medium high yield. Very good flavor for an everbearer, and then also it is firm. It's good for multiple different types of uses of extended season, low tunnels, high tunnels, greenhouse uses. So it's also good for direct-to-consumer sales, and then also wholesale. Plants are going to need a little bit more nitrogen during the spring, and then if you plant for fall production, make sure you get it in earlier, mid-August to the beginning of September, depending on where you're located. It's not very rain resistant, we have found, so you got to be cognizant of that. Why plant Monterey? Because it is firm, it has decent flavor, and it is good for extended season type production. We have trialed many others in our breeding trials throughout the year since 2015, and all that data is available on the Strawberry Portal at NC State University. So just Google Strawberry Portal NC State breeding program, and you will land on that data. We also have this information as a handout on that Strawberry Portal soon, so you can look for that there as well. Oh, we've also trialed a lot of different cultivars from those different breeding programs across the country and across the world as well. So all that data is there, and we will continue to trial new materials and see if we can continue to find alternatives to those three standards. Thank you so much for the various grower groups that have supported this program throughout the years, and if you have any questions, you can contact me at NC State University. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Jayesh Samtani. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Plant and Environmental Sciences based at the Hampton Roads Agricultural Research and Extension Center in Virginia Beach, and I wanted to show you some of the varieties that we evaluated this strawberry growing season. This is a nitrogen dose response study to the different varieties, and we have collected data on the marketable yield, non-marketable yield, and total yield. We are also looking at some of the other post-harvest parameters like fruit size, sugar content, and we are looking forward to analyzing the data. But before the field season ends here, I just wanted to show you some of the varieties that are bearing fruits. It is pretty late in the season. Our season has ended earlier this year as compared to last year. We had the May temperatures fluctuating in the 60s, 70s, and even some 90-degree days. So the strawberry plants did not seem to respond too well to those fluctuating temperatures, resulting in an early termination of the strawberry season. We evaluated 3 advanced germplasms from Lassen Canyon Nursery, and just want to show you the advanced germplasms. The first one is 1240. You can see it has a nice conical shaped fruit to it, nice exterior color on the fruit, and fairly large size fruits. And these advanced germplasms are being tested on various locations of the East Coast, mainly looking at the flavor component of the germplasm as well as their ability to withstand rainfall conditions during the harvest season. The second germplasm from Lassen Canyon Nursery it has also pretty large size fruits, and you can see the exterior of the fruit color is pretty good, and The fruit size is pretty good, and this is also a very good tasting berry. We've had some tasting tests in our lab, and it's a pretty good tasting berry. Okay, the third germplasm has also fairly large size fruits, maybe not as large as the other two germplasms, but still it's got a nice shape to the fruit, and again a very good tasting berry. This is Chandler. This is still the most popular berry variety in the mid and South Atlantic region of the US, and I would say this year has been really good for Chandler. We did not have as much rain, so that is something Chandler does not take very well. If you get a lot of rainfall, the berries turn mushy really quick after being picked. But this year, the fruits tasted good since there was no rain. We did not have a lot of leaky berries after picking them from the plots. You can see the plot is still going strong for Chandler. Sweet Charlie is another popular variety for our region, and it has been grown for its early bearing capacity. However, this year a lot of the farms, they saw a resurgence of the flowers sometime during the middle of the season, and we still are surprisingly still seeing some fruits on the plant. And again, Sweet Charlie has really a good tasting fruits, so if you haven't really tried one, make sure you are able to try this variety. It's a fairly old variety. Another variety that is fairly popular in our region is Camarosa. A lot of the growers who do wholesale picking would grow Camarosa. And it's still growing strong this season. You can see the fruits are still fairly large in size. We don't have as many blooms, so that's an indication that the season will be ending. The fruit is supposed to be picked at a deeper red stage on its exterior. Ruby June is another variety that has been gaining popularity in our region due to its flavor as well as the size of the fruit. It's an early to mid-bearing variety, so not as many fruits for this time of the year, but just want to show you what we have in our plots. The fruit size usually decreases as the season progresses, and this is probably a more typical size of Ruby June that we see at our center here. This one is rotten here, the fruit is rotten. This one's another rotten one here, but some of these ones here are pretty good looking here. So you can see the fruit of Ruby June, again a very good looking fruit. It's a very good tasting berry as well. We didn't really see a lot of pressure on diseases this year, mainly again due to the month of May being fairly dry. And we were keeping up with our fungicide applications every 10 to 14 days, so never really came across a huge disease surge really on any of the varieties at our center. One of the other varieties that we've been paying attention to the last few growing seasons is Merced, and it is a variety from University of California, Davis, released in 2013, and it's able to withstand arid conditions fairly well. So we were thinking during the hot summer months, especially in the month of June, we should be able to get a better yield out of Merced, and we still see some fruits on the plant. We haven't analyzed the data completely to determine whether or not it would be a good late season variety for this particular season, but you can see there's still some nice looking fruits on the plant. Here again we can see some good looking fruits. It's got a fairly good taste to the berry. Okay, the last variety I want to show you is Festival, and not as many blooms on the plants, so definitely doesn't look like a good late bearing variety. In the past when we've evaluated it, it gave us about moderate yields in Virginia, so we are evaluating this variety the second time at our research center. You can see the fruit size is down. There's one or two berries we spotted that have a little bit of a larger fruit size to it. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, here they are. So Yeah, look at these berries. So in the beginning of the season, the fruit size was larger than this, and also the fruits are quite firm for this particular variety. I'd like to thank my students, Dayong Liu, Crystal Moore, Jiwon Sibon, Shireen Sayani for all their hard work put into harvesting berries, as well as my technician Patty Richardson. This study has been funded by the Institute for Critical Technology and Applied Sciences at Virginia Tech, and also funded in part by the Southern Region Small Fruit Consortium. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to follow the Virginia Tech Small Fruit Horticulture Program, you can look me up on Facebook or on Twitter by searching #VTBerryBite.
I'm Edgar Vinson, fruit crop specialist with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System. And we're here today at the Chilton Research and Extension Center in Thorsby, Alabama. Today I'll present selected strawberry varieties and share with you how they performed this year so far. Strawberries, like other crops, are sensitive to their environment. The degree to which strawberries are sensitive is largely variety dependent. So our goal is to find varieties that are adapted to the unique climate of Alabama. Our strawberries are produced using the annual hill plasticulture system, which is a system that is installed once a year. And as you can see, we have black plastic mulch, and underneath that black plastic mulch is drip tape with emitters that allow moisture to seep out, and these emitters are spaced at 12 inches. During the winter, we had to cover them to protect them from the cold. We use something called a floating row cover, which is a spun bond material made of polyester. It has a weight of 1.5 ounces per square yard. It provides an increase of 8 degrees above ambient temperature.
In this table, we have total marketable yield, cull or marketable fruit weight, total production, which is a combination of total marketable yield and cull fruit weight, and individual berry weight. Numbers within a column that have letters in common are not significantly different. In 2021 trials, we found that the former market standard, Chandler, produced a similar marketable yield to Camarosa, which is the current market standard. In addition, Camino Real and Fronteras had marketable yields that were similar to both standard varieties. We saw the same trend in total production yield. Fronteras produced the largest berries of all varieties. Berry size of Ruby June, Albion, and Chandler were similar to Camarosa. Camino Real and Rocco, on the other hand, produced among the smallest berries. They were similar in size to Chandler, but were significantly smaller than Camarosa. Fronteras produced large, attractive, cone-shaped berries, and they were found to be sweet with little tartness. Camarosa plants are large and produce fruit that is sweet with excellent flavor. Plants of Camino Real are also large, and they produced large berries, uniform in size early in the season. But as the season went on, these berries were medium in size overall. Berries were sweetest when harvested at full, deep red color. Rocco was found to have a nice balance of sweetness and tartness. Fruit of Albion and Ruby June were both remarkably flavorful and sweet. These berries were found to have the best flavor overall in this year's trials.
Fronteras is a new variety for us. This is the first year that we've tried it, and it is a variety that it comes from California. It produced the largest berries that of our trial at about 30 grams, and the yield also is pretty on par with Camino Real and Camarosa. So the industry standard variety is called Camarosa. It's a variety that is very well adapted to our area. A lot of growers like it, and it's grown throughout the state. It produces large, sweet berries, high quality berries. They're firm, and they're good for shipping. It's been a very productive variety for us over the years, and it's a variety that's going to be pretty hard to beat. A strawberry variety that has come the closest to Camarosa, and in some years it surpasses it in yield, is Camino Real. It produces a high yield and a very somewhat large berry, one of our largest berries in the trial. Among growers, there's been some conversation about the flavor of Camino Real. When this berry is harvested, when it is deep red full color, then it can give you the best quality. Next we have Rocco, which we were really excited to get this variety in our trials. We actually got it in our trial a couple of years ago when it was a numbered variety and not yet released to the market. It's a variety from the NC State breeding program. As you can see, it produces some nice, neat, compact plants and largely conical fruit. It is a very sweet, very tasty berry. And it was bred as a replacement for Sweet Charlie. The next strawberry is Ruby June. It's a popular variety among some growers, but some growers have had a bit of a challenge growing it, and we discovered that it may have to do with fertility. We've discovered that Ruby June has a higher nutrient requirement than some of the other varieties, but it does produce a nice sweet berry, and in some years it can rival with Camarosa, but we have seen some years where the productivity has been a little bit low compared to Camarosa and Camino Real. Once we determine the best way to fertilize it, then it could potentially produce berries on par with Camarosa and Camino Real more consistently. The problem with Albion in our area is that we see several gaps in production during the season. So the yield of Albion doesn't quite compare with Camarosa or Camino Real. Large berries that are consistently conical in shape, and they are an excellent tasting berry. And these are what we call runners or stolons, and they are produced in response to the increasing temperatures as well as the amount of light exposure to light. Before dedicating a large area to your operation in a variety that has been unproven, I would plant just a small test plot to see how it works out for you, to see if it would be a good fit for your markets. To find more about this and other research, you can download our Farmer Basic mobile app or find us online at alabamabeginningfarmer.com. I'm Edgar Vinson, Fruit Crop Specialist with Alabama Cooperative Extension, wishing you a bountiful strawberry season.
Hi everyone, this is Amanda McWhirt, Extension Specialist at the University of Arkansas. I'm going to give a very brief update from some important results that we saw from our 2020 and 2021 strawberry variety trials, and make some comments about which varieties tend to work well for us in Arkansas, and some of the things that we've learned over the last 2 years of conducting this research. I do want to thank the Mid-American Strawberry Growers Association for their support of this work. One comment I'll make very quickly is that these trials were all planted at the University of Arkansas Vegetable Research Station that's just outside of Fort Smith in Zone 7B, and were managed using standard recommended practices that you've seen recommended in this course. One important thing that we learned from this trial was how different cultivars vary in their susceptibility to cold injury to their crowns from different weather events. In the first year of this trial, we had an extreme weather event about a month after planting in November, right around Veterans Day. We hadn't had any cold weather yet that year, and temperatures actually dropped about 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit in a single day. And we had low temperatures around 13 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit statewide after that event. The plants were actively growing and had not hardened off yet, so they were susceptible to cold injury at those temperatures, and we did see some injury to the crowns following that event. In the second year, in February of 2021, this past season, we had another cold event where Arctic air passed through Arkansas and the low temperatures dropped to minus 20 to 0 degrees Fahrenheit across the state and stayed pretty cool in the days that followed. This event was a little different because the plants were dormant and there had also been a lot of snow that fell. So we had blankets of snow of anywhere from a few inches to 6, maybe even 10 inches of snow that covered the plants and really helped to insulate them. So we saw less cold injury following this event, but we did still see some cold injury. Also in April 2021, we had a pretty significant freeze event during bloom, and we did lose some flowers despite using row covers during that event. So I want you to keep these two events in mind, because I think one of the most important things that we've learned from this trial is how cold hardy or cold susceptible different cultivars can be. And when I say injury to crowns from cold injury, this is what I mean. So we created a rating scale of 0 to 3 to go out and actually do these assessments of cold injury. What we wanted to see was a rating of 0, where you cut into the crown and it's nice and clean and milky white. A rating of 1 would indicate that there was some cold injury starting to happen, some browning that you see there at the top of the crown. A rating of 2 was just a little bit more intense browning, possibly more of the crown affected. And the rating of 3 indicated that there was such an extreme level of cold injury that we actually started to see the tissue disrupted and breaking, where there was like minor level of necrosis maybe happening to that tissue. And this would indicate that there was a severe level of cold injury that would very likely impact yield in the following season. All right, so here are yield results from our 2020 and 2021 variety trials at the University of Arkansas Vegetable Station in Kibler outside of Fort Smith. On the left-hand side, you can see all of the cultivars that we evaluated. We looked at Rocco, Liz, Chandler, Camarosa, San Andreas, Camino Real, Fronteras, Ruby June, Sweet Charlie, and Albion. And those are listed at highest average marketable yield per plant to lowest average marketable yield per plant. So Rocco, Liz, and Chandler were our 3 highest yielding cultivars, and Sweet Charlie and Albion were our 2 lowest. I'm not going to focus on too much of the yield and fruit quality aspects here. I'm going to focus more on our cold damage ratings because I think a lot of the previous speakers have already talked about the characteristics of the different cultivars and their performance in the region. I will say that Chandler, Camino Real, Ruby June, Sweet Charlie, and Fronteras are probably the most popular cultivars for us in Arkansas and tend to do very well. And hopefully some of the results that we're going to talk about with cold damage will help us better understand how to manage these cultivars so that they can maximize their success. So if we look over here at the cold damage ratings, you'll notice that the average ratings in 2020 are much higher than the average ratings in 2021. And that, I think, goes back to the fact that we had that November freeze event. The plants had not acclimated at all, and so the plants were more susceptible to cold injury. We do have the averages there. We do see that on average, Chandler had a cold damage rating of 0.88. So we want to see a rating closer to 0, which would indicate less injury, whereas if we have a rating closer to 3, that indicates more cold damage. So we see that Rocco had the average lowest cold damage rating of 0.50. We see that Fronteras had the highest average cold damage rating of 2.38, followed somewhat closely by Albion that had an average cold damage rating of 1.63. So cultivars like Fronteras and Albion may benefit from additional row covers if we're going to have a severe cold event and the plants are not well acclimated yet in the early fall. We do see that, there does seem to be somewhat of a trend of our varieties that yielded lower do have higher ratings of cold injury versus varieties that tend to yield higher on average did seem to have lower cold injury levels. We do see that, in 2020, when we had more severe cold injury overall, we did have lower yields. And so we do know that we want to protect our strawberry crops from any cold injury that happens to the crown, because that will ultimately impact flower and fruit production the next spring. So just some brief updates from our trials here in Arkansas, and I thank you so much for watching.